Hi guys, so the year was 2004. I was living in a shared house of 4 people, one of whom was a girl, which was exciting. And one night I asked her if I could have a look at her DVD collection in her room for the purposes of possibly borrowing a movie for the evening. A bit like you might go round and borrow a cup of sugar or something. She said yes, so into her room I went and I looked at her collection, and it was the most god-awful collection of films I've ever seen. Shelves packed with rom-coms and Disney films. It was just horrible. I think I knew in that moment that there was no future for me and this girl as anything other than housemates. But there was one film in that collection which stood out like a sore thumb. It was like a shining beacon of light in a sea of turds. And that film was 28 Days Later, a film I'd heard about but not yet seen. So that was the one that I borrowed. And for me in this movie, the rest is history. So this is a zombie film set in the UK. It was directed by the legendary Danny Boyle, and it has an absolutely brilliant cast. I'm not sure it would have looked so brilliant at the time it came out, but when you look at what some of the actors in this went on to achieve, watching the film in 2022, you're like, wow, this is a fantastic cast. So we've got Cillian Murphy in the lead role, a man who needs no introduction. We've got Naomie Harris, who went on to play Moneypenny in the James Bond films. Looking at her in this film in like 2002, it makes me wonder how old she was, because in the James Bond films, like 20 years later, she almost looks exactly the same to my eye. I'll throw you another name, Christopher Eccleston, who plays the main villain in this. Now, I'm not sure if this guy has much fame in America and around the world, but certainly in the UK, very famous TV actor. He played Doctor Who for a while. I haven't heard of him popping up in much recently, so maybe his fame has dwindled a little bit, possibly, but there was a time when he was extremely well known in this country. I'll throw you one more name into the mix, Brendan Gleeson. Maybe not the most famous name, but definitely an actor that most people would have seen, probably without even realising it. He's a big, stocky, ginger guy. He's always a little bit down the cast list. He's never the main leading guy in anything, but he's been in so many films. I'll give you an example, because just this week I watched 28 Days Later, and then a couple of days after that I watched Mission Impossible 2 with my son, because we're doing a run through those films at the minute to prepare for Mission Impossible 7. Who turns up in Mission Impossible 2? Brendan Gleeson, who I saw not 2 days earlier in 28 Days Later. So the plot for this begins in London with a character called Jim, played by Murphy. He's been in a coma during the time that the zombie outbreak started, so he's playing catch-up a little bit with the rest of the world. When he wakes up, he's wandering around like, oh, what the hell's been going on? It's sort of the exact same opening that you get in the Walking Dead TV show. It's literally identical, and I thought to myself, okay, so which came first out of these? Who copied the other? So I did a little bit of digging online. Now, 28 Days Later came out in 2002, whereas the Walking Dead TV show came out in 2010, but The Walking Dead is based on a comic, so you've got to look at when the comic came out, really. The Walking Dead comic came out in late 2003. So on the surface, it appears that the Walking Dead comic creator, Robert Kirkman, might have been the one to copy the Danny Boyle's movie. But then if you look a little closer, even though the 28 Days Later movie came out in 2002, it didn't come out in America till almost the fall of 2003, which is right on the cusp of when the Walking Dead comic got going. So at the end of all this, I kind of think to myself, maybe it was just the most amazing coincidence that you've got these exact two openings that are both the same in these completely different mediums. But it doesn't matter that they're sort of similar to each other, because when you're watching 28 Days Later, when Jim's walking through London at the start, Georgia and Rick Grimes couldn't be further from your mind. And similarly, when you're watching Rick in Georgia, the last thing you're thinking of is Cillian Murphy walking in a hospital gown all the way through London. Speaking of Jim's trek across London, this is the sequence that everybody remembers about this film. It's what contains the film's money shots, essentially. I don't know if they were able to cordon off any streets for this, or whether it was a case of just turning up at 6 a.m. every day and hoping that they could grab a couple of moments where no cars were coming down the road. The other night when I was coming into this rewatch, these scenes in particular were the ones I was really looking forward to checking out again, but they look very blurry and grainy now. I wasn't expecting like a big 4K experience. I mean, I was watching this on a DVD, but I thought with this being a very grungy sort of zombie film, I didn't think I would really care about it not necessarily looking really high def, but wow, the scenes have not aged very well. They are very blurry, and apparently Danny Boyle filmed all this London stuff and a lot of the rest of the film as well, actually, on really low-grade, amateurish tech, because he wanted to use stuff that he could move around very quickly from location to location, but the price for that was the film not ultimately looking its best when it came out. Something else I found out, and I will admit that I found this out on Reddit, so it might not necessarily be the most reliable of sources, but these cameras that were used for the making of this film, they were so low grade that you can't even now remaster this film from the negatives, so we might never actually get a 4K version of 28 Days Later, which I just think is an absolute travesty, because this film deserves to be uplifted into something better than what it is at the moment. Apparently the Blu-ray is basically just the DVD but moved to a different box, so I wouldn't necessarily bother with that either. Getting back to the story, so Jim wanders across London, he meets some friends, and they sort of try to make a go of it in the capital, but that doesn't work out. And they hear a broadcast from Manchester up north promising sanctuary, so I think there's 4 of them by this point. So they then set off for Manchester, but when they get there, that's when the human threat of the film becomes evident. Every good zombie film or TV show has a human threat, and so the finale of the movie basically takes place in this soldier's compound up north, where our main characters have to battle not only zombies, but also very human soldiers. There are a number of tributes to the George Romero zombie films throughout this. So just when the characters are about to leave London, they go on this little shopping trip to this cheesy mall music, which is just straight out of Dawn of the Dead. And then later on, when we get to the the soldiers' compound, it definitely brings back memories of Rhodes and his crew from Day of the Dead. And I've yet to find a homage for Land of the Dead in this movie, but I will let you know when I do. If the London scenes have the best visuals, the Manchester scenes have the most exciting content. That's where the real meat of this film takes place. The movie does a very good job of establishing the soldiers' characters very quickly, because I don't think these guys even turn up until at least the halfway point. And yet, even the first time I watched this, I felt like I knew who each of the soldiers were very swiftly, you know? And I like the fact that they're not just all evil twats. Out of all 9 of them, or however many there are of them, probably only the Cockney-sounding Mitchell is someone who was bad before the outbreak. The rest of them, I think they've just completely failed to make the transition from human world to zombie world. There are 2 characters in particular who impressed me. The leader, whose name I can't think of off the top of my head, I'll just call him the leader, the guy played by Eccleston, and Jones, the cook. 2 guys who you can just tell from watching them in this, the things they say, the way they act, that even though they're doing bad things, they're just completely at war with themselves, you know, as to why they're doing those bad things. And towards the end, when the leader realizes that it's all gone to hell, he doesn't make a massive effort to track down Jim and kill the good people. He's just kind of lost, wandering around, firing his gun, talking random shit. So I like the depiction of the soldiers. I also really like the music. The music of this film is fantastic. I've already touched upon the Dawn of the Dead tribute stuff with the shopping mall tune. We also get a really good indie rock song that plays when Jim's wandering through London. And just for even more variety, we get a kind of church tune that plays when the characters are sort of going down the motorway towards Manchester. And then we get the creme de la creme, the 28 Days Later theme, which plays over the main finale, and it just fits that finale like a glove, like a glove. It's absolutely awesome, and they bring it back as well in the sequel. If I've got any negatives for this film, aside from how it looks, there's a really strange performance from the actress who plays Frank's daughter. I can't remember the character's name again, but this performance is extremely flat. I mean, it is like school theatre level of amateurishness. It's really noticeable. Now, I did look up this actress on Wiki. She's only ever done 3 movies, even up to 2022. So it's not like acting went on to be her big thing. But weirdly, 28 Days Later was her second of those 3 films. And the first film she did, she won an award for. So clearly she had some talent at some point, but then came to this film and just puts in one of the flattest performances I've ever seen in my life. It's really bad. Like at one moment, her dad gets shot several times by the soldiers. So he's basically dead on the ground. She's 5 yards away and she's just going, "Dad, Dad." And it's like, yeah, that's not really the tone that was called for here. You need to go bigger with that. I'm sorry. But apart from that, the film is absolutely superb, all across the board. Just a quick word about the zombies. They are absolutely ferocious in this. I had forgotten just how dangerous the zombies are in 28 Days Later. They're the fast-moving variety, so they're always going to be more dangerous than the slow-moving ones anyway. But even so, I mean, they are fast in this. They are clever. At one point, we see some of them clambering over big piles of trolleys, and in other moments, they're forcing their way through French windows. I think they've speeded up the film reel at times in this to make the zombies seem faster than the way that the actors were probably doing their performance. This is a slightly dangerous thing to do from a filmmaking perspective, because I saw a film once, I think it was the Day of the Dead remake from 2006, where they really tried to speed up the film reel to make the zombies seem really fast, and it just ended up feeling really silly, like the zombies were suddenly like human-looking insects scurrying around and stuff. But I think they get the speed just right in this. It's pretty damn good. I'll quickly show you the version of the film that I've got. Here is my DVD copy of 28 Days Later. There's a lot of features on this, but this came out back in the days when DVDs made a big effort with features. So we've got an audio commentary with Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, 8 deleted scenes, an alternative ending. I think I watched that at once upon a time. You know what? I think I've watched all of these features like way back in the day, and it was so long ago now that I just can't remember doing so. I've just got a vague memory of trawling through a lot of these way back when. The alternative ending, I think, is it changes it so that Jim dies from his gunshot, and it's just the 2 ladies who survive. But I think it's better as it is, to be honest. Pure Rage, the making of 28 Days Later. So probably a short little documentary, a music video, some Polaroids. There's a whole bunch of stuff on this, honestly. It's some really good content on there. Right, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what score I'm going to give this film. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4... 4.5 bloody axes out of 5, and given the fact that I've got a lot of criticism for how this film looks now in terms of its visuals and the way it was filmed and etc., that is a really, really good score, because at its heart, this is a really exciting and well-made film, very well thought out. It is a classic zombie film for me now, and I am really looking forward to revisiting the sequel, which I have not seen in many, many years. Right, I'll leave it there for today. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.